There was a reason why I was trying to stick Alice in between, because I really want the people running for school board to hear Alice's talk, but that's good. So Alice Linahan is a mom that lives up in Argyle, Texas, which is where Marika and I moved to when we first moved back to Texas. Was heavily involved with the Dallas Tea Party, and she and I and quite a few other people out there were doing a lot to fight illegal immigration. Then she got very much involved in trying to get Joe Strauss removed as Speaker of the House, and she devoted a number of years to that. But she kind of found her niche on education, and she's one of the top education gurus from the conservative perspective in Texas. She's very principled. She goes out there and states the facts. She won't back down. I don't always agree with all of Alice's conclusions, but I also don't know as much as she does. But there's probably no one that knows more, no one that gets more into the weeds than Alice Linahan. And we really thought that we came up with the idea a few days ago that what better time to have Alice come speak to our group on this particular issue. And we've got some school board candidates in the audience. So anyway, Alice, where are you?
Right here.
Alice, welcome to Parker County.
Thank you all very much. Raise your hand. How many of you have children, grandchildren, nieces or nephews in public schools? How about private schools? A couple. How about charter schools? Back there. Any homeschool? Have family that homeschool? Okay, homeschool. There is a transformation happening across our country in education. And I will tell you that this transformation is not conservative versus liberal, even Republican versus Democrat, because all sides are involved in education reform. I can tell you that Barack Obama was very much involved in education reform. I will also tell you that Jeb Bush was very much and is very much involved in education reform. I will tell you that within the traditional public school model, we have two key trade organizations here in Texas that are very involved in education reform. One is the Texas Association of School Administrators. The other is the Texas Association of School Boards. And I encourage you to go online on TASA's website, the Texas Association of School Administrators, and look for their new vision of public education. And the #1 item in that vision is online digital learning. And they are fully implementing online digital learning in every school district in Texas, public schools and charter schools, because charter schools are public schools. They are public-private partnerships. The difference between a traditional public school and a charter school is that locally elected school board. And there is a concerted effort by education reformers on both sides of the aisle that want to eliminate the locally elected school board. And why is that? Because they might actually say no. They might actually say, we want a choice to be able to hire a teacher that knows how to teach reading, writing, math, and history without a computer. I will also tell you that education reformers like Jeb Bush, who are pushing school choice, are also pushing for online digital learning curriculum. And you hear so many people say, our public schools are terrible. They're indoctrinating our kids. They're harming our kids. We've got to do something about those public schools. Well, why is that happening in our public schools? And it's because elected officials at the state level on both sides of the aisle are education reformers, and they are passing state legislation that is mandating a transformation in education. And in a nutshell, what the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills that were put into place in 2012 have done is they have shifted by law the education in our public schools, meaning our traditional public schools and our charter schools, away from teaching reading, writing, math, and history to teaching attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors, and changing the next generation's worldview. Now, I want to invite all of you, this presentation, and Mike said I had 20 minutes, and I have a lot of information, but this presentation, you can go to womenonthewall.org, and you can pull this, you can watch this presentation. All the links to document what I am saying are in this presentation. And I want to encourage you, please do your research. Go on there and pull the links and prove me wrong. Because I would give anything, and I will humbly submit if I am wrong and publicly say that I am wrong. But I've been out speaking on this for the last 6 years, and I've been begging somebody to prove me wrong, and they haven't. So if you go to womenonthewall.org, you can find this information. Every Thursday night for the last 6.5, 7 years, we've had a conference call where I've had experts from across the country who've called in that we've been able to ask questions and find out this information. And that's why I know what I know. Next slide. This is a global transformation in education. And I'm going to go through these pretty quick because there's 2 key things I want you to understand. Next slide. Next slide. Common Core. Yes, we have Common Core here in Texas. Yes, you have Common Core in Weatherford ISD, Aledo ISD. They just call it College and Career Readiness. When Texas filed a waiver from the federal government, in that document, it says that we are 92% aligned to the Common Core. In fact, in math, those 2012 math standards that changed, there was a man who testified who was appointed to validate the Common Core nationally and refused to because he said it would put our children behind at least 2 to 3 years in math. And children who are in this for more than 4 years will never recover. And he testified in front of the Texas State Board of Education that our math standards here in Texas are actually worse than Common Core. Next slide. These are the main purposes behind Common Core and the college and career readiness. They shift education philosophy away from an education of opportunity, equal opportunity, to an education of equity and equal outcomes. It broadens the impact. We no longer have a kindergarten through 12th grade education system. We now have a P20W, which stands for preschool through the workforce. And now that our health care is married into our education, it's actually the P and P20W stands for prenatal through the workforce. Testing outcomes. They are no longer academic, knowledge-based, they are behavioral. They adjust the ideology away from nationalism to globalism, and they dismantle the traditional public schools instead in favor of charter-like structures and public-private partnerships. And if Texas conservative Republicans push for school choice, and we get education savings accounts here in Texas, this plan will be fully implemented. Next, we need parents. We started with Women on the Wall calling on parents to go into the schools and ask 3 questions. Can I see what you're teaching my child? Can I see how you're teaching my child? What is the professional development of the teacher? And number 3, can I see who's financially benefiting from the curriculum products on which my child's teacher is evaluated? Because those public-private partnerships are a whole new industry, and online digital competency-based learning is a multi-billion-dollar global industry. And there's a lot of people making a lot of money after the fact that teachers are no longer evaluated on if they're teaching math in the classroom, but if they're using technology in the classroom. So we need parents asking, can I see what data you're collecting on my child? Can I see how that data is being used? And can I see who's financially benefiting off that data? Next. This is an important slide, and I beg you to go on womenonthewall.org, pull this up, and do some research. There's a key player in all of this, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD. The OECD runs an assessment system that aligns with UNESCO's Sustainable Development Goals. They have partnered with Google and Microsoft to implement these goals. There's a guy, Andre Schleicher, he's a German. He worked with the Obama administration to revamp the K through 12 assessments in the United States. Now this is the key. The OECD reshaped the assessments so that they run in the background of online curriculum. In Texas, they are going to get rid of the STAR test. That's what HB 5 was really all about, that sets up these pathways. Now every 8th grader has to decide what they want to be when they grow up. But they sold it as we're getting rid of the STAR. We need to get rid of those STAR tests. But what's coming is the next generation of assessments and accountability, which are formative tests. They're not end-of-course tests, do you know 2 + 2 is 4. They are the assessments that are running in the background of online curriculum. This is key. Now I want to read 2 quotes to you from the OECD. The skills, attitudes, and values that shape human behavior should be rethought to counter the discriminatory behaviors picked up at school and in the family. You think you have local control? All young people should be able to challenge cultural and gender stereotypes to reflect on the causes and solutions of racial, religious, and hate violence, and to help create tolerant, integrated societies. Please, someone prove me wrong. Next slide. Along with the Common Core national standards, along with the college and career readiness standards, there are data standards. They are global data standards. Can you play this short clip? Going? Is it not going? If it's not going, that's okay. We'll go to the next because I want to end and I know I'm running out of time. Please go and watch this clip because it will show you that the data that is being collected on our children is no longer private, and it's being used and collected by the state and federal government. If you can go ahead and go to that other clip on YouTube. Oh, here's that one.
This massive global effort to achieve universal education has been made possible by data. In fact, more than 1,000 internationally comparable indicators produced by the UNESCO Institute for Statistics have kept governments accountable while measuring progress on a host of education issues. But does this mean our work is done? Not yet. Data show successes and failures. Roughly 1/4 of children who enroll in primary school drop out. Of those who stay, many are not learning at the appropriate grade level. This issue is being addressed by the Sustainable Development Goal for Education. It's an ambitious plan, with governments promising 12 years of quality learning for all. But to meet and measure this goal, we need more data, especially from poor countries, so we can produce different kinds of indicators. But data are messy. Education data come from many sources, each with its own criteria and classifications. This makes it hard to answer even simple questions, such as, how much does education cost? Calculating total education spending must consider money coming from different levels of government, as well as funding from private donors and NGOs, not to mention what parents spend on books, uniforms, and other fees. To get a clearer picture, we're working with governments to develop common standards for all countries, and conducting workshops to show statisticians how to find and use data from different sources. By improving the quality of national data, governments can spend smarter, and our job of producing global indicators becomes much easier. Data also point out areas that need more attention. For example, millions of children are still not in school. What's holding them back? We work with partners in countries with high exclusion rates to collect a wide range of data and information. With detailed profiles of out-of-school and at-risk children, governments can address the factors that perpetuate inequality and tailor plans to ensure that every child enjoys the right to education. But that's still not enough. Data tell us that millions of children are leaving school without a basic grasp of reading and mathematics. How can we expect these children to compete in today's rapidly changing job market? Many countries conduct learning assessments, but right now there's no way to compare results on a global scale. So, we've begun working with partners to link different assessments and develop global measures of learning, which will enable countries to monitor student progress and strengthen policies to improve learning outcomes. This is no easy task, but if we do it right, every student, teacher, and school will have the chance to excel. We produce data to transform lives.
Now I want you to watch one last clip, and I beg 2 minutes to go over.
But when used effectively, data can give you the full picture needed to support the incredibly important education goals of parents, students, educators, and policymakers.
To create
that said, there's a lot that must happen before data can be meaningful and useful to everyone.
Them to the best in the world, they're world class. And I'm for that. That's what I'm for.
When I was involved in convincing governors and others around this country to adopt these standards, it was not Obama likes them. Do you think that would have gone well with the Republican Democrat? Shouldn't you instead be meeting with the Council of Chief State School Officers? Those of you who say that probably have not attended as many of those meetings as I have. And they might wonder whether we had a legion of talented lobbyists or friends in the right places. Think of a napkin. Think of a few people in a room with an idea.
In terms of standards, the state-led Common Core State Standards Initiative is developing clear, rigorous standards that will match the best in the world. Last month, 46 governors and chief state school officers made a public commitment to embrace those standards. This is encouraging, but identifying common standards is just the starting point. We'll only know if this effort has succeeded when the curriculum and tests are aligned to these standards. Secretary Arne Duncan recently announced that $350 million of the stimulus package will be used to create just these kinds of tests. Next generation assessments aligned to the Common Core. When the tests are aligned to the common standards, the curriculum will line up as well. And it will unleash a powerful market of people providing services for better teaching. For the first time, there'll be a large uniform base of customers looking at using products. Like, imagine having the people who create great online video games applying their intelligence to online tools that pull kids in.
If you could tell us sort of in layman's terms what Newton does. I know it's a platform.
We're basically a way for anybody, any content owner, whether they're a great big publisher, an individual teacher, anybody in between, to kind of plug in. So what we do is we data mine education content and then we personalize it.
But once you can put an iPad or a similar device in the hands of any kid anywhere in the world, you suddenly can get that kid access to the world's greatest teachers and the world's greatest education technology. That as an education just bleeds data, produces an incredible amount of data.
More exciting is the person who led the Obama campaign's use of data to galvanize a generation of low-income people to vote like they had never had before. Whether you are Republican or Democrat, the simple precision and excellence of the use of information to achieve a result is something in my mind that deserves astonishment. It means, again, that there is no force greater. Think about it. Think about it. Hundreds of millions of dollars spent on this campaign. And what made the difference, right? But this incredible precision and insight gained from data, not only knowing where people are, but testing various interventions, seeing what works, keeping focus on delivering them. And that, of course, is Dan Wagner, who led the analytics for the campaign. So we're partnering with Dan Wagner's team from the campaign on the data side to build, we actually have the largest set of data, perhaps on some counts. As a membership institution, we have a large school counselors are part of members of the College Board, high schools and colleges. How can we leverage our members, in a sense, as an army?
You can go ahead and turn it off. That gentleman, David Coleman, once they got the Common Core national standards into 45 states across the country, he became the president of the College Board. The College Board owns the copyright to the SAT and all advanced placement frameworks and assessments. I will close with this. Texas has a Commissioner of Education, Mike Morath. He was appointed by Governor Abbott. He's loved on both sides of the aisle. He has no background whatsoever in education. He is now the Texas Commissioner of Education. I need you guys to help me to question Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, why we have a Commissioner of Education who has no background in education, and why his background is as a software entrepreneur. The data that is being collected on our children is not, did they pass an end of course test? Commissioner Mike Morath at the Next Generation of Assessments and Accountability Commission meeting called on them to call for non-cognitive character TEKS, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. Meaning, if the state has character standards that they are requiring from our school districts, then they have to test it. That means that they are psychologically profiling our children. And if you don't think that's a backdoor threat against our Second Amendment, you're crazy. And I will end with this quick thing. Leander ISD, there was a mom who got a letter from the school district who said that based on her daughter's STAR test, they have partnered with a third-party company called Innova who did analysis and data collection, and based on her daughter's STAR test, the district has deemed that her daughter needs psychosocial therapy, and that the school district has now put a mentor with their daughter. Their daughter passed the STAR test, is an athlete, had no other signs other than this third-party company that the school district, the superintendent recommended that the school board have a contract with this third-party company doing psychologically profiling. There very likely could be a lawsuit coming out of that. There is so much going on that people don't understand, and our children are at risk. There's a reason why the suicide rate is spiked. There's a reason why we're losing veteran teachers in droves. There's a reason why in Houston ISD, Dallas ISD, Waco ISD, the TEA is taking over those local school districts and bringing in private companies. I will tell you, this is the last thing I'll say. There was a fundraiser for a nonprofit organization in Dallas a couple of months ago. And they said that their biggest hurdle in Texas was Texas high school football. Because in Texas, especially in our rural communities, I already know Aledo and Weatherford and Argyle, we care about our extracurricular activities. Why? Because I don't care if your child is on the football team, a cheerleader, in the band, color guard, and I don't care if your child is black, white, purple, or yellow. Everyone in our community comes together to rally around those kids. That's their biggest hurdle. So fight. Educate your school board members to make sure that they ask the questions that need to be asked, and call for the school board members to demand a comprehensive data plan in your district to protect the privacy of your children and their teachers. Because in 2012, Obama changed the regulation on the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. The new regulation that he put in place by executive order says that our children and their teachers' private data can be collected without consent in the name of education research. And that's what opened up Pandora's box. And it may well be too late. So the only people who can stop that are moms and dads who say, no, you cannot have my children's private data, and school board, elected school boards who say no at the local level. And I will stay till the very end, and anyone who has questions, I am happy to answer them. And I don't have copies for everyone, but I have copies of this presentation for any elected school board members or candidates. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. We do need to move on, but I do have a question for you. And probably, this being selfish, is probably the only time I'll have one question. I have Michelle Malkin's article that came out a week or two ago, and in the second page of the article, it says the recently passed Every Student Succeeds Act further enshrined government collection of personally identifiable information, including data collected on attitudes, values, beliefs, and dispositions, that allows release of the data to third-party contractors, thanks to Obama-era loopholes carved into the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. That's what you were just talking about just now?
You're exactly right. And that bill, it was passed in 2015. It was 1,061 pages long. Not one congressman read it, because when the final bill was released, it was passed 48 hours later.
Okay. If I just give you 30 seconds, because I found your talk very interesting, but you're not convincing me there's data mining going on. And you know how much I love you and I trust you, but maybe it's my fault for only giving you 20 minutes, but Michelle Malkin seems to think that there is. I saw some very disturbing things, but since we entitled the talk about data mining, I'll give you 60 seconds. Give me some proof that actually data mining is going on in a Lehigh Independent School District, or in Texas in general.
Because the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, reading, writing, math, and history, embedded in those standards are technology standards. The districts are mandated to use the technology in the classroom by the state, and nobody is questioning that. In fact, in 2001, Microsoft gave the Texas Association of School Administrators $7 million for professional development of superintendents to bring technology in the classroom. How many of you with kids in Aledo ISD and Weatherford ISD are your children on district-issued technology are mandated? Yeah. So in Argyle ISD, my daughter was the only student whose parents refused for her to use a district-issued Chromebook. And I went to a school board meeting, this was 3 years ago, and you can find it on the video on my Facebook, and I asked the superintendent, what would it look like for my child if I refused to allow them to have a district-issued Chromebook? And she said it'll be much harder on the teacher because they'll have to come up with a separate lesson in order for your daughter to take that class. Google Classroom is required now in school districts across the state. And they were talking about, Bill Gates was talking about it. So in their own words, they're talking about what they're doing. And it's interesting because just last week, the TEA announced that all of the assessments, the state-mandated assessments, will be online digital learning. The #1 recommendation of the Next Generation of Assessments and Accountability Commission, their recommendation to the Texas legislature was online digital learning assessments and instruction. So it's there. I mean, it's in law, it's in the standards, and it's in the classrooms. And I can tell you from my own experience with my daughter, it was very hard for her because she was the only one who wasn't on a computer. So the proof is there. Yeah.
Thank you. Like she said, you'll stay around afterwards. Okay, fantastic.